Hello everyone and welcome back to another video where I'm going to talk about my vinyl collection. It's been a while, but now it's December, there are not a lot of albums coming out, so I have a bit of a more free time in order to get into some albums that I have over here in my collection. And let's start right off the bat with what has possibly become one of my favorite discoveries from recent years, and that is this collaborative album from Venetian Snares and Speedruns, Making Gorillaz Things. I haven't found that many albums that would sound as this. This is without a doubt one of the most disturbing and one of the loudest and most disgusting albums I've ever heard in my life. No other artist has done such a clever and such a unique combination of speedcore, breakcore music with power noise and really harsh noise elements. There are some really loud high frequencies in this thing and some quietly disturbing vocals and melodies in general. So for this album to actually be a record store day release, this is a big surprise. Even though Venetian Snares is kind of a big name in the breakcore scene, this album is definitely the harshest thing he has ever done. Some of his previous works in the past were a bit rough, were a bit aggressive, but nothing has ever come as aggressive as this. And I don't have that many things to say about this album rather than you should definitely listen to it. Even though it's not for everyone, it's a bit of an acquired taste, but if you want something really aggressive, I think this is a highly underrated Venetian Snares album, and I can get why in a sense, because it's not an album in his discography that you can easily get into. I love the album itself, it has a great quality to it, I love the sound to it, and I love this transparent orange color. It definitely fits for this album being named Making Orange Things. It's a double one, I don't really know why, because it doesn't really need to be a double album, but the quality of this is incredible. It's not a gatefold one, unfortunately. I would love to have a bit of a more sick artwork like the one we see over here. It has a bit of a different track listing compared to the one version on CD. I don't know why this is a thing, but I'm not complaining nonetheless, because every single track is on here and I almost love anything about this album. This is a unique experience. I haven't found that many albums that would sound like this, and I highly encourage you, if you're looking for something quite disturbing and quite messed up, to go and check this one out. The next ones I have over here are two albums from Cahill. This is a project released by Tesco organization that has members of Genocide Organ and Anencephalia, lots of those artists that are known into making some really great power electronics and death industrial stuff. And when it comes to the more death industrial side of things, you get some extremely good results with those two albums. Zone Zero by itself is a great album. I really dig the aesthetic of this album cover and the back of it, with a track listing to sort of look like a map or something. And then the album itself is on this really nice white record. The other one, on the other hand, the Syndrome Antidrome, it's on a standard black edition, so I don't really feel like there's any need to show you that. But Syndrome Antidrome was for a long time my favorite album of 2017. This is how much I liked it. What changed is the fact that World Eater by Blank Mass really grown on me, and so this is what I consider album of the year. But talking about some death industrial stuff, some really nice sort of dark and atmospheric power electronics, this is an absolute recommendation in my opinion. Definitely an album that you have to check out if you're into this sort of stuff. And if you like stuff from Tesco organization, this is something you must not miss. Now I have 5 more albums to show you right there, and these are all albums that I bought back in the day when it was like a record store day or it was like Black Friday. It was one of those things, but regardless, there was a bit of a discount into some of the prices of those records, and those are the ones I decided to get. Let's start with a classic one, Gorillaz, self-titled, the very first album. In my opinion, this is the best Gorillaz album and one of my favorite albums of all time. An album that I grew up with. There were tracks like Clint Eastwood that I knew from back in the day when the video clip was playing on MTV, back when MTV would actually play some really cool songs. And I really like what they did with the repress of this thing, with this whole gatefold, with the inserts over here. They have done a really nice job with the inserts of this thing. And in general, I really love this album. In my opinion, it is my personal favorite Gorillaz album, even though for a lot of people it's Demon Days. For me, it's the first one, it's the self-titled one. It combines so many different styles together, and for such a long album, almost each track over here is amazing. I really love this album. Then the next one I have is Wonky by Orbital. It's an album that, yeah, it's a bit wonky, and Orbital is one of my favorite electronic groups of all time. I pretty much love everything they've done, and this album is not an exception. While it's a bit of a change up in the direction they took with the sound, after a comeback of like 5 or 6 years, or maybe even more, yeah, this is the result. An album that in a sense it feels a bit more approachable. I mean, it has some weird and obscure features, but the album itself, I think it's great. I think there are some great tracks. It's a double album. It's not a gatefold, unfortunately, but I really dig the vibe and the aesthetic, what they did with this album. Really solid electronic release. It also goes into lots of different moods. I really enjoy this album. It's extremely catchy and one of my highlights in the Orbital discography. Getting into the more black metal ones, we have 777 Sects by Bluetooth Nord. Definitely one of the most innovative black metal bands out there. I really dig lots of the stuff they have done. And this album is one of my favorites, and I really like what they have done with the packaging of this thing, having all of those shiny, sort of gluey, I don't know how to describe it, but the gatefold is impressive. I really like what they've done with this album, and by itself it comes into this really nice color. It's kind of weird, it's this gold splatter thing. I really like it and it really fits with the whole aesthetic of the album cover and the album itself. The album also plays really well, and some of my favorite works from Bluetooth Nord, they land on this album. And in this trilogy in general, I think the 777 trilogy is possibly my favorite thing the band has ever done, really pushing the envelope on industrial black metal sound. Next one, I have to censor this. It's an album from IKEA, the god of Mendes. Yeah, there are a few tits over here. IKEA is a band that usually plays a lot with nudity. This is a double LP that I quite like, I quite enjoy. Yeah, I can't really show anything from the gatefold over here. I like the packaging on this thing. I love those particular sleeves. You know, I love when albums have those types of sleeves. And the album in general, it's a quite decent black metal album. Not one of my favorites in my collection, but it's an album worth purchasing considering that I got it pretty cheap and it was definitely worth it. And last but not least, I have bought this bootleg version of DOA, the third and final report of Throbbing Crystal. It was back in the day where I wasn't really sure about this whole thing with bootlegs, and it was before some of the more recent represses, but still the sound of this thing is quite good. Throbbing Crystal, it's one of the very first, one of the most essential and one of the most important industrial acts to exist out there. This album is really weird. You can hardly consider it music for the most part. It plays with a really bizarre dark atmosphere, but this is an album that the more I listen to it, the more it just becomes a bigger grower. It's an album that it's a bit hard to decipher because there are also lots of tracks in this thing, but the more I listen to it, the more it just becomes a grower. It's an album that needs patience, it needs multiple listens, but the ending result is an impressive album and easily one of my favorites in their discography. And I also love the aesthetic of this album cover is one of my favorites. And that's all I had for this video. This is all the albums I wanted to show you in my collection from today. What's your opinion on these albums? If you like them, if you want to stay tuned for more, let me know down in the comments. If you enjoyed the video, subscribe for more content like this. Thank you for watching and I'll see you all in the next video. Goodbye.